Hello and happy Wednesday and happy New Year. My name is Beverly Hasford and this is my friend Erin Nitschke. We are on Facebook Live for the National Federation of Professional Trainers, which is a personal training certification and continuing education company and family of fitness professionals. And NFPT, if you didn't know, is located in Indiana, and I live in Montana, and Erin lives in Wyoming, and we're all connected by this wonderful World Wide Web. So happy New Year. And today we're talking about the ketogenic diet. We're going to talk about ketones, the diet, what it is, what it isn't. Is it low carb? Is it high protein? Is it not? And we're just going to help you understand what it's all about. Of course, personal trainers and fitness professionals are not supposed to prescribe diets or recommend them unless you are nutrition certified or a dietitian or you live in a state where they don't care.
Which there are several.
Yes, there are quite a few states that don't care about nutrition certs. But in general, you've got to be careful about telling someone to do it. But if someone asks you about it, it might be great to know the ins and outs of a ketogenic diet. And also, it would probably be good if you wanted to give it a try yourself to find out if it's the right fit for you. And I was actually recently recommended to get onto a ketogenic diet, which I think we'll talk about that in a little bit. But if you're with us, I see we've got some people jumping on. Feel free to say hello and tell us where you're from, or tell us what your New Year's resolution is. You know, it's a cliche topic right now, but it is one. And I will probably get to something with New Year's resolutions next week. We didn't even talk about that yet, Erin. But so say hi. Erin, do you have any New Year's resolutions or anything you want to share with our viewers about New Year's?
Oh, I go back and forth. And instead of resolutions, like I try to just set an intention for the year, like a goal. Because I think the thing with resolutions is we talk about them so loosely and so casually that we don't ever really, like it'll be in a conversation like, well, I plan to lose weight. But then it never comes up again. So I try to set a focus and an intention. So whether it's like being more mindful about X, Y, and Z, and then I actually will put it into action steps in my calendar. I'll schedule 15 minutes for mindfulness. Like I'm going to look up a topic related to mindfulness or something like that. So it's more of an intention than it is, like a goal that's centered around weight loss and nutrition and that kind of a thing. I like to set learning goals, I guess, is really the way that I approach it, because I'm a nerd and I like to learn. So
yeah. I think a year is a really long time to set one goal for the entire year. So I like to start my new year off with something that's going to help me make a little bit of a shift into the year. Mm-hmm. This year I'm going to try to be more like you and get a workout in every morning, because a lot of times I'm just like, well, I'll probably go do something later today, and the day gets away from me. And that's just kind of been the theme of before I was a mom, I could do that. Like I could wait until 3:00 and jut out and go for a hike, or I could wait till 4:00. These days it doesn't always work out with the weather, the baby, whatever. So so if I don't know for sure that I'm going skiing because I've got daddy daycare that day, or I'm not sure that like I'm on dog duty and I'm going to go to the park, and yesterday I walked around with the backpack and the baby in it. If I don't know for sure, then something needs to happen before 9 a.m. That's what I'm going to kick off with. And so far I'm doing all right with it. It doesn't have to be long, only has to be 15 minutes at the most. That way, if nothing else happens that day, I at least got that 10 or 15 in.
Yes, exactly. You don't have to get crazy. You just have to be consistent.
Yes. Awesome. So let's see if we've got anyone. Oh, John said, we'll just start off with a couple of these so that they're on our mind. John said, I've tried a ketogenic diet and found even though I was eating a calorie deficit, I was not losing weight. I feel that some people don't respond as well as others. With me, I feel that I need to restore my glycogen stores with a moderate amount of carbs, or I trigger a starvation response. So that might be something neat to keep in mind. We can pull it up later if you want, Erin, if it doesn't fit right now. And Carl wants to know, how is this different from Atkins, and is long-term ketosis harmful? So that's something else we can pull up later if you want. You just let me know. And Billy says, fit fam, hashtag. And Billy says, I start my new year on my birthday. Oh, so it's like it's my year. Getting off high blood pressure meds is my goal. Sweet.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, we've got some great things to start with today. And then I think, Erin, we'll probably just start off. Why don't you tell us what is this ketogenic diet, and is it different than high protein diets, or is it just like another low carb diet basically?
So I think the sad part is low carb diets get like all wrapped into one umbrella, and they vary greatly in terms of their macronutrient breakdown. And with the Atkins diet, that really focused on super high protein and not so much on quality of protein necessarily. With the ketogenic diet, it's actually not a high protein diet. It's a moderate protein diet.
Okay.
It's low carb. Like it's like 5 to 10% of your macronutrient breakdown. And it's actually high fat. It's not a high protein diet. So I think there's confusion there, because when somebody hears ketogenic, they automatically think, oh, well, if I'm cutting out carbs, then I'm going to increase my protein. And that's not what the true ketogenic diet is. The ketogenic diet is designed to basically build up ketones in the body, which are just those like acidic byproducts of fat being metabolized when the body isn't able to metabolize carbohydrates because there aren't any. So it's not about the high protein. So that's the first fact I think people need to understand about it, is it's not, you don't take in 60% protein. It's very moderate, 10 to 20% maybe.
Okay. And tell me a little more about this word ketone and ketogenic. And I'm like, I don't even know what to call it. Is it keto diet, ketogenic diet, ketone diet, And then I remember like when I was a trainer in the early days, people said, if your client smells like that, what's that smell? It's like a
sweet smell.
I don't even know what the smell is, but they're like, if your client smells like that, they're in ketosis, and that's bad. So I was told it was bad, and now it's good. So tell me a little bit, why are there so many versions of this word ketone?
I honestly think it's creative interpretation of science.
Okay.
It's honestly what I think it is. Ketogenic is just, if we, look at the rules of English, it's just describing what that diet is doing. It's generating ketones, which are just those products that result in the blood from the breakdown of lipids, from fats.
Okay.
So that's really all it is. And the reason it's ketogenic is because it's dropping that carbohydrate intake very, very low, like 5 to 10%. That's crazy low. And I don't mean crazy low in terms of, it's going to kill you if you do it, like it's so dangerous or anything like that, because there is a body of evidence out there that's legitimate, that's not creative interpretation of science or completely made up principles, that shows some benefits for certain populations. So it's really just about reducing that carbohydrate intake very, very low, so that the body is essentially forced into finding alternative fuel sources.
Okay. So the carbs are low, and then you're finding alternative fuel sources. So then your body goes to fats.
Mm-hmm.
But and then when your body goes to fats and uses the fats, those fats are turned into ketones. That's kind of that's why it's called ketogenic. Okay.
Essentially, yes. Like,
so we're not eating ketones or anything. We're just
ketones are not something you're going to go out and buy. It's something your body naturally produces as a response to a shift in that homeostatic balance.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
Oh, you can finish up.
I was just going to say that, the body's a truly tremendous machine in that it does a lot of our thinking for us. It can be good and bad. But with the ketogenic diet, our central nervous system is nourished by sugar, by glucose. So it can't necessarily function super well on anything other than sugar. So when you reduce that carbohydrate intake, that the body has to adapt in order to survive. And so that's when we see those ketones start to build up, is when carbohydrate storage in both the liver and in the muscles are being completely depleted. The body's got to be like, okay, what do I do now? I've got to take energy from somewhere to keep going. And so it comes from dietary fat and body fat.
Oh, okay. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask a question here. I'm wondering, then if the brain operates best on glucose, so then you're going to say the brain's going to operate on fat now. So is the brain okay with that?
So that's a really, my brain would not be okay with that. I tell you what, I've never met a carb I didn't like, but in about 3 to 4 days is really, maybe even longer than that, but generally we start to see the ketones build up in 3 to 4 days of that kind of restriction of carbohydrates. And there's kind of something called a keto flu. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to lie, you're going to feel like crap. You're going to feel like crap because you're making your body discover an alternative fuel source that it doesn't typically use unless it's at rest. You know, I mean, we burn fatty acids when we're sitting here kind of hanging out. And then also when your body hits that wall, like say in an endurance event or something like that, we see that energy fuel start to shift in order for the body to keep going. It's a natural response. Mm-hmm. But people report feeling really foggy. Yeah, because you're not feeding your brain. Don't, attempt to take a class or, give a lecture or do anything like that in the first week or so. Because you're not going to be really sharp mentally. Right. It might appear that your IQ has dropped quite a bit because you're just foggy. I would compare it to like pregnancy brain. That pregnancy fog where you're just like, why am I in this room? Who am I? What day is it? I mean, it's those kinds of things because your brain is just, it's having to struggle to catch up and it's being depleted. So initially the brain is not okay with that. But then the body adapts.
Wow.
It's not a long-term, I would never recommend that somebody participate in this type of diet over a long term.
Okay. That was what Carl had asked.
Yeah, that was a great question. Yeah. It's got some really wonderful initial benefits, but over the long term, like any sort of restriction and extremism, there's going to be some sort of risk factors involved.
Okay. Yeah. I think, I don't know if he asked it in the comments here. How's it? Okay. No, he asked me this morning if, so it's something you do like in the short term to get some kind of result and then.
Yeah.
And so before we move on, Billy said, how long does it take to get into ketosis? I think you answered that. You said it takes a couple days.
3 to 4 days is really about the average that I've seen just from the research I've read and just knowing a little bit about it. It's usually about 3 to 4 days. And then the body, I mean, it's kind of amazing that the body adapts that quickly.
But so once you get into ketosis, you have to keep eating that way to keep your body in ketosis. Mm-hmm. All right. And then how long does somebody want to eat like that for?
Ultimately, I think it's going to depend on the goal. It's going to depend on, why are they on the diet in the first place? And I think with any kind of diet, when you're deviating from the mainstream in terms of how our bodies were designed to function and live and survive, that absolutely needs to be something that's done under the supervision of a registered dietitian. I don't care what state you live in, okay? I think it just needs to happen because they're the ones that are going to have that licensure. They're going to have a greater body of research access than personal trainers will. So I think anytime you deviate and you go extremism on one end or the other, I think that needs to be something that you research closely with somebody that's got that scope of practice. Yeah. But I would never, it would depend on the goal. So if somebody wanted to lose weight, like how much do they want to lose? Yeah. Would dictate how long they'd be on that diet. Or if they're, maybe somebody with type 2 diabetes, how, it's going to vary, I think, depending on the condition and the goal.
Sounds like a pretty serious diet. It's not like the South Beach. I know there's a cookbook for it. And I know that there's a whole company now that makes some kind of pill or drink that supposedly gets you into ketosis in 5 minutes or something.
Please, people.
I know there's a lot of people messing around with it, but I'm right off the bat here just feeling like this is not something that I would want to be telling someone to do or have any involvement with unless I was a medical doctor and supervising it. So yeah, because I just saw recently a fitness professional colleague of mine, she's talking all about this keto drink and how she's like, my body will be in ketosis within the hour.
Oh, good plan.
And she's pregnant. She said that it's totally safe. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to judge, but I was like, wow, you know, it's her third pregnancy, so she's probably feeling pretty confident about it. And she seems to really know a lot, but yeah, I don't know. I saw that and I was like, ooh.
Yeah. Hard pass.
Yeah, I'm going to stay tuned and watch the experiment unfold. But we've got some more questions here. Gail says, Happy New Year. And Gail also says, how does the body go back to normal?
That's a great question. And the same way it goes abnormal, the body adapts back to, you know, it's kind of like what we see when, you know, we go into any kind of diet and there's a restrictive sort of prescription that we put ourselves under. So whether we can't eat more than this many carbs or we can't, you know, whatever the case, the body adapts, but then once we reintroduce that, the body then adapts again. And the body is designed to adapt to that stimulus and whatever stress is being placed upon it. So your entire human body systems are going to work together to adapt over the long term.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe it doesn't take 3 or 4 days though to go back. Maybe it shifts quicker, but who knows? I don't even know if they really know that much about some of that.
Honestly, I really think the keto diet is something that there's so much emerging evidence. I think it's really exciting, just like anything that we discover in health and fitness is really exciting. Mm-hmm. And I mean, look how far nutrition has come in general in terms of, you know, back in the day, it was low fat, like cut everything out. Well, that's kind of the new nutrition darling of the day. And other things are so it's exciting to see the emerging research, but at the same time it's new.
Yeah, it's new. Be careful. I'm excited because Billy asked about poop.
It's all about
he
poop.
Wants to know if it's true that there's side effects to constipation.
Yes, it's absolutely true.
Okay.
You're cutting out the source of fiber.
Okay. So yeah, and just like with anything, there's side effects. Like you said, there's a flu, there's constipation. You're doing something drastic to your body, so your body's gonna react in a drastic way. It sounds like so, and that's where I would have to throw in. I can't help myself but say like body awareness is so important. Like, and I would, and I think we'll wrap up in a little bit today with like what to eat or what not to eat. Billy says your audio is echoing, Erin. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything you can do.
Let me
maybe turn on your volume or something. Oh, she's gonna sign off and come back in a second. Erin has an echo coming through. Yeah, I think she's gonna reload. So,
better.
Just reload it.
Yeah,
good idea.
It. And I can hear the echo on my end, but I thought it was just on my end.
Yeah. Let's see if anyone says. Let me know, Billy or Gail, if it got better or worse. What I was going to say is that body awareness is so important. Like paying attention to how you feel and what's going on. And I think some of those symptoms are expected, but like I actually tried a little taste of the ketogenic with myself because my naturopath suggested it to me because I have a certain gene that makes it really hard for me to process cholesterol, and it's also a gene that increases my risk for Alzheimer's. And the ketogenic diet is recommended for people who have neurodegenerative disorders. And so I don't necessarily have one right now, but she said you might want to just play around with this. It might actually just make you feel really good because it's recommended for people that have that sort of chemistry in their body. And what's interesting about increased risk for Alzheimer's is that your cholesterol gets funky. So my cholesterol is funky no matter how healthy I eat or how much I exercise. So anyway, she said, why don't you play around with it? She said, just try fasting 13 to 14 hours overnight. And they actually recommend 14 to 16 for the ketogenic diet. And then she said, don't eat for 3 hours between meals. And that was all she suggested. She said, just give that a try and just see if you feel good. And I actually felt pretty good. And I got myself to drink more water. But then I was like, I don't really need to do this right now. And I kind of like snacking with my son because he's a baby, he likes to snack. And I was like, I don't really want to be that strict, but I tried it for a few days and I did feel okay. So like, I think it's really important I didn't like get that flu thing or anything, but I did it gradually. I did first just the overnight, and I made the overnight, like I started with 12, then I made it 13, then I made it 14. And then I added in just like after a few days of that, I added in the like skip meal between breakfast and lunch, like don't eat anything. And then I eventually added in the last one. And then after I did that for 4 or 5 days, I was like, I don't really, I felt okay, but I just don't feel like being so strict. It's a big lifestyle change. But I think it's important to pay attention. And I think, if you jump in cold turkey, you're going to get that flu. So anyway, hopefully your sound is better, Erin. It sounded fine to me, but I'm going to turn it back to you to talk about so the ketogenic diet, like I said, is used for like Alzheimer's or no, is that because we're changing the source of fuel?
There's a lot of emerging, I can still hear the echo. And I even have like my volume turned down pretty low on my end. So
you could reboot your computer if you want to get real serious about it. And I could chat a little bit about the breakdown from your blog. It's up to you.
What's Billy's question right there? What's the difference?
What's the difference between a low carb diet and a ketogenic diet?
So it depends on how the low carb diet is being defined. Technically, the ketogenic diet is low carb because that macronutrient breakdown is it's so low in carbohydrates. It's like 5 to 10%.
Gail said, "Turn off your speakers."
Turn off my speakers.
Thanks, guys, for bearing with us. Here, I'll throw up some fun holiday pictures while we're waiting. The live still giving me all these holiday frames. Kind of fun. Oh, she said better. Okay, perfect.
So is that better?
She said it's better.
Okay. All right. Well.
Low carb versus keto.
Yeah, so low carb versus keto. So they're the same thing. A ketogenic is a true low carbohydrate diet. But there are other low carb diets out there that might not be as low as the ketogenic diet is. Like really, the ketogenic, I've seen anywhere from like 100 grams of carbs a day minimal or as low as 50. That's true low carb.
Yeah. Wow. So there you go. There's so you were saying it was still what, 5 to 10%?
5 to 10% of your total macronutrients, so your total calories. 5 to 10% of your total calories are gonna.
Yeah, that could be as much as like 200.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Your question about the neurodegenerative, there's a ton of emerging research with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and all kinds of those neurological disorders and the benefit of a ketogenic diet. The mechanism of action and why it's a benefit isn't fully understood. There's a lot of animal studies out there right now. So I suspect in probably the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see, maybe something that could even be not curative, but less limiting than, so that the disease wouldn't be as limiting, or perhaps it's an increase in quality of life or longevity, could potentially even reverse the effects or at least stop them from progressing. So it's not such a progressive disorder. But that evidence, and I can post one of the research articles that I came across in the comments today so people can take a look at it. I'm sure it would interest a lot of individuals that are those sciencey kind of, want to know the answer. But there's a ton of great research out there about how this could benefit people with neurodegenerative disorders. Beyond that, the strongest evidence is for weight loss and for like type 2 diabetes. So with the type 2 diabetes, you're essentially reducing that carb intake. So you're reducing an insulin response, and it helps the body become more sensitive to insulin rather than insulin resistant.
Great.
So there's great evidence there.
Yeah, there's got to be like a chain reaction though. Like just, you take one thing away or you add something and the body's going to adapt and you're going to have a positive result in one arena, but there might be a negative result on the other end. Like, adding all that extra fat in, like maybe it would help someone with Alzheimer's, but maybe it might harm their cholesterol levels. So I think it is really important to do it under the supervision of a doctor. Like the naturopath I see does a blood test with me quarterly and just checks in on any of the numbers that are of question with me.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important, because then otherwise, how do you know what's working, what's not working? Like, I'm not just going to go off of what the scale says, like, because I don't really lose or gain weight that much. So, and then you can go off of how you feel and symptoms and everything, but seeing those numbers from the blood test, I think depending on what your concern is, like, why are you doing this diet, I think it's really important. So I think it is, again, good to recommend that personal trainers, fitness instructors, they just kind of know about this, and that they know more than anything to say, hey, like, this is a pretty severe diet. Like, I wouldn't just pick up the ketogenic cookbook and jump in, or like sign up for a network marketing company that has a pill, unless, you've really done full circle of your homework, or unless you're just a really apparently healthy person and you don't have any issues.
Yeah. I think that, this is the good time to bring up John's earlier comment that he had at the beginning about how he didn't see any benefits. I think that's an absolutely valid point, and it's why it needs to be so individualized. We all have different responses. Yes, we need the same basic types of nutrients to be able to function. That's just biology and biochemistry. But the way our genes develop and evolve over time often dictate how we'll respond to this diet or that diet.
Yeah.
So it's important, and that could be potentially why, John, you didn't see any particular benefits or really anything like that, is because maybe you have great body awareness and you think this is not for me, and it's not functioning the way that it's intended to function. It's not intended to be a, sweeping generalized diet for everybody. I think one of the other areas of research that's really interesting is with cancer. There's some emerging evidence that it could be beneficial for cancer patients as a therapeutic modality. Cancer cells like sugar. They like it, and they thrive on it. And so if we take away their fuel source, we then in some way snuff them out? Yeah. That's a question that research is looking at. So I think it's really interesting. But again, the research is really not huge with like people like athletes. Like, there's some research out there that I've come across. There could be more, but it might not be so beneficial unless it's for a certain type of athlete, like an endurance athlete.
Okay, awesome.
So just, I think as personal trainers and fitness professionals, I think it's important that you dive into the body of literature, get a PubMed account, dive into it and find out what's out there. Because this, and I talked about this in my trends article about we'll see the ketogenic diet, I think, becoming more and more popular, because I think there's more and more people buying into it, and maybe not for all the right reasons. So just know what the research says and be able to answer those basic questions. And really, when you look at the food list, and I think you were going to talk about this, you wanted to talk about this at the end, right, Bev?
Yeah, I think we could wrap up with, kind of what the plates look like. Sure.
Okay. So
I do want to, before we do that, I'm going to throw up your 2018 trends article in the comments in case anyone wants to look at it. And John had a really interesting comment. He really is not into this diet. He says, it makes socializing tough because friends are going to feed you carbs. It's hard to tell your friends, I'm not eating what you cooked. That is
fair point. I just brought water. Thanks.
Yeah. I just brought water. Yeah, it can be really tough with diet restrictions to lead a social life the way that you may want to, but all things in balance. So why don't let me just see if anyone else has commented. Oh, Billy's got another question.
Okay.
If your body has to produce more insulin to metabolize carbs, is there a concern for insulin resistance?
So that's one of the reasons why we see diabetes develop. It's an insulin resistance issue. When that blood sugar remains high all the time, the body has to produce that insulin, release it in order to shuttle the sugar into the cells. And when it's chronically high, the body wears out. then we see that insulin is not functioning as well. And so that's one mechanism of action why it might work for people with diabetes, because they are insulin resistant. Mm-hmm. We take away that which, kind of provokes the insulin, which is carbs, and we dump in fats and moderate protein and a little bit of carbs. Carbs are the ones that have the most dramatic effect on insulin. Protein and fat have almost none, which is one reason we say marry your carbs with fats and protein to reduce that insulin response, that insulin spike. Yes. So that's how insulin resistance will develop. In some ways, with very severe cases of type 2 diabetes, they have to be on an extra insulin because their body's just either not producing it or the body is just not responding. So it's unable to shuttle those sugars out of the bloodstream.
It's complex. Sweet. Well, let's wrap up with kind of what like a plate, maybe like what a breakfast, lunch, dinner might look like, or some of the foods. And I definitely want you to cover, like, again and again, we got to cover what are healthy fats, because this high fat diet, I mean, I would hope no one thinks that means
bacon,
donuts, and all that stuff. But
right.
What are we talking about with healthy fats? Yeah.
So really, the focus is on the fat with the ketogenic diet. So we're talking about your monounsaturated and your polyunsaturated. So things like your olive oils and your nuts and your seeds and your flax and salmon and sources like that that are those high omegas, and you've got the unsaturated fats. Avocado is a great option. Even coconut oil is a great option, although it's higher in saturated fat. It's still considered a healthy oil. And this diet isn't even really about counting calories. It's so focused on making sure that, okay, fats are the majority, then a little bit of protein, really minor amount of carbs. And the focus really of the carbohydrate part is taking out those really highly processed simple carbs, which truthfully, shouldn't we all be doing? At least minimizing them. You don't need Frosted Flakes, and you don't need to put sugar on fruit, that type of thing. It's just, seriously, fruit is nature's candy. So what are we doing when we can it and we dump in a bunch of syrup? So really, that's the focus is taking out all that processed stuff. Wine, unfortunately, which would be difficult for me to leave behind, but getting rid of all the white sugar stuff. Yeah. So, but it doesn't include a lot of grains. It stays lots of veggies. So there's some fiber component there, but non-starchy veggies. So sweet potatoes and normal potatoes, those aren't included. Sadly, they're not included, but they're a starch. So leafy greens, kale, spinach, that type of thing. So really that changes the way breakfast would look, because I'm sure a lot of people will do like a bowl of oatmeal or, something like that. That really changes into, okay, a 2-egg omelet with maybe some shredded chicken and some spinach, onion, garlic, something like that, where there's not a focus on the grain.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I feel like it gets so tricky because you've got people that have like an egg allergy or, and
fish.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why as personal trainers, one reason why our scope of practice is so much more, so much narrower than an RD, because we don't really know what's going on inside the body. So if somebody's got a sensitivity issue here or an enzyme issue here, that needs to be prescribed and monitored by that dietitian.
Wow. Do not envy dietitians.
I so wish I would have become one.
Oh, really? Yeah. I'm like, wow, so much to consider. Don says, when I ate keto, I had broccoli, eggs, coaching coconut oil, and almonds. Mm-hmm. And Billy says, too many people count carbs and not chemicals, someone once said.
So true. So very true. Like, unfortunately, carbs have been made out to be the devil, and they're really not. But the same thing was made true about fats 20, 30 years ago. Fats are bad. No, they're not. Our interpretation of what they do in the body is somewhat misguided.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's perfect to end on. Like, just like when we talked about cortisol a few weeks ago, cortisol is not bad. It's just carbs are not bad, but understanding these mechanisms and then having that body awareness, like John mentioned, just knowing this is not for me. It's not working for me. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to diets, like, or, food sensitivities or intolerances, like, I really believe that, the food can cause stress in the body, but the mind can cause just as much stress if you're limiting yourself or like not getting to, if you're stressed about what you're eating, then it's going to be worse than the food that you're putting in your body. That's how I've always felt about it. So there's got to be, each person has to find their own homeostasis around food and thoughts and emotions and everything, exercise.
Yeah. And it needs to be about your relationship with food.
Mm-hmm.
We can't, I don't think, categorize or compartmentalize food into this is good and that's bad. Because I think then we become a little bit too obsessed and too restrictive.
Yeah.
Practices.
Yeah. The mind is powerful the placebo effect and people who are into homeopathy. It's like, I think the mind is powerful, and the more you believe in things, the more you're going to see them come through. And not to say that there isn't validity to whatever diet you're doing and how it's affecting you. But I think it's important to wrap up with that we want to make sure we're paying attention and we're aware. And then there's the knowledge and then just like trying to stay relaxed about it all and enjoy the life that we're living too.
Yeah.
Whatever enjoyment means to you. Because I feel like there's a lot of definitions.
Yeah. Very true.
So if anyone has any more questions, you've got a minute or two to post them. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Thank you, Erin, for being so educated in nutrition. It's definitely not my forefront. I learned everything that I need to know from people like you and my naturopath and my friend who's a nutritionist. So
I love it.
But they always tell me the same thing too. Pay attention to your body, listen to the signals, and work with your body. So sweet. Well, I think we didn't really talk about next week, but I think maybe next week might be a good time to talk about goals or New Year's resolutions. I always love talking about that. So we could probably come up with something for next week around that theme. Unless you had anything else, Erin?
Nope. I think that sounds great. Good timing.
Awesome. And thanks for joining us, everyone. If you liked this episode about ketones, please share it. Just click the share button, spread the word so people can understand what's going on with ketones and ketogenics and all that.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's chemistry.
Are all having a good New Year so far. And you can join us every Wednesday at 10 a.m. You can set an alert. If you go onto Facebook, you can click the little button and it will remind you of our show every week so that you don't miss any of them. You can also catch up on old shows on YouTube, on NFPT's YouTube channel. And we'll see you 10 a.m. Mountain Time next week, noon on the East Coast and 9 a.m. on the West Coast. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.